Welcome to the series on a self-worth driven education. A few years ago, I encountered a young grade 9 student who, with board exams upcoming, needed to have a lot of motivation to see her through, but motivation had left her. I asked her what happened. She told me that up until grade 6, she had all the confidence in the world. She was passing her exams, she was even ranked 3rd in her class, and then it happened. She failed her first exam. That night, she went home crying and continued to cry the whole night. Then she failed her second exam, then her third. And by the 5th exam, she was no longer crying. She was laughing. What would convince this young student to change her approach to failure into something that should be mocked and made fun of? That to me illustrates the need for a self-worth driven education.
A self-worth driven education consists of 3 core components which are all intertwined and interconnected. The first, of course, is self-worth. The second, the idea of a growth mindset. And the third is what the United Nations has come to term the global citizenship objectives. These 3 together form the basis of teaching and training from the perspective of self-worth. First, self-worth. What is self-worth in contrast with self-esteem? The simplest way to express this difference is the source of our belief in ourselves. Self-esteem draws its belief from the estimation that we have among our peers and by the measures that society sets for us. In other words, we compare. We understand what are our strengths based on what we think are other people's weaknesses. This is the source of self-esteem. Self-worth, on the other hand, draws its source from the belief in our potential, which is both unknowable and immeasurable. There is no way for us to understand the impact that we may have in the people around us, in our community, and even in the world as a whole. And this unknowable potential is what challenges us. The second component, a growth mindset. To understand this, you'd have to first understand what is traditionally seen in the education systems of today. That is a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset says you have a fixed capability to understand. You have a fixed ability to move forward with education. In fact, there's just a fixed upper bound to what you can learn. A growth mindset, on the other hand, does not measure where that upper bound may be. It measures our ability to learn in terms of our ability to move forward. If a child can learn addition, the next step is multiplication. And if they can take that step, then they can take the next step. We see the difference in a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset in our approach to failure. Growth mindset sees failure as an opportunity to get up and move forward in a more constructive direction. A fixed mindset sees failure as an opportunity to give up. In my example of the student that I encountered a few years back, her mindset changed from a growth to a fixed. We need a growth mindset if we are going to establish a self-worth driven education. The third component in a self-worth driven education are the global citizenship objectives. About 50 years ago, UNESCO set forth these objectives in a recommendation that had the intent of shaping education towards building a world community which understood our similarities, but more importantly, benefited from our differences. I encourage each of us to go and read these objectives on their website. The link can be found below in the description. There are many objectives that they've laid out, but the first step in all of them is empathy. Empathy is the starting point for a self-worth driven education, and the objectives form the direction in which we are heading. In the next few episodes, we'll explore how to integrate both empathy and the global citizen objectives. I look forward to each of these episodes, and I hope you join me as we explore a self-worth driven education and how it can impact our techniques, strategies, and relationships with students.